We are an NSF GMP certified company. Tatiane, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. I'm sorry, we had a little technical glitch, so let me start that again.
No worries.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to join us for today's discussion. We had a little bit of a technical glitch, but we have it all figured out. My name is Tatiane Berdum, and I am the Business Development Executive at the Burdock Group Consultants, and I'm joined today by an amazing group of people, all experts in their own field. And to be fair, I'd like to introduce them alphabetically, but let's begin with Asa Waldstein. He is the new Senior Vice President of Operations at Functional Remedies. Asa, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Hey, thank you, Tatiane and the Burdock Group for inviting us to talk on this important topic. It's really great to be here with so many excellent panelists, including our friends from the U.S. Hemp Authority. So I'm Asa Waldstein, and as Tatiane mentioned, I'm the new SVP of Ops at Functional Remedies as of about 3 weeks ago. Functional Remedies is a NSF GMP certified company and has a very unique holistic infusion process called LipidTrans, which pulls out cannabinoids, flavonoids, omegas, chlorophylls, and much more. And this is really the brainchild of Tim Gordon. So does anybody out there know AHPA, the American Herbal Products Association? We're one of the top dietary supplement and cannabis trade groups. I've served on the AHPA board, and I'm also chair of their very fun and dynamic cannabis committee. This year, we're celebrating our 10th anniversary of the Cannabis Committee. So we're in for a special treat today because my fellow panelist, Elan, was founding chair of the Cannabis Committee. So think about 10 years ago. I don't think I even mentioned cannabis in the workplace. Elan, along with AHPA staff and Michael McGuffin, came together to really put this committee together to promote responsible herbal commerce for this wonderful plant. So thank you, Elan, and everyone. Real quick, I'm the founder of Boulder Hemp CBD Group, an education and event series, and you can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter if you'd like to connect. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Asa, for that. We also have Brett Goldman with us. He is the Vice President of Government and Industry at Gincana. Brett, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. This is Brett Goldman, and as Tatiane said, Vice President of Government and Industry at Gincana. I've been working in the hemp industry for over 5 years, and we at Gincana are a vertically integrated producer of hemp and hemp-derived CBD. We are founding members of the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, the U.S. Hemp Authority, and the U.S. Hemp Growers Association, and I'm active in all three organizations on behalf of the company, and I oversee federal government affairs and state government affairs at Gincana. I've spent most of the last year working with the USDA on the development of crop insurance for hemp production, as well as helping tweak the interim final rule, which I'll be speaking about a little bit later. And looking forward to being a part of this great panel.
Well, thank you so much. We're happy to have you. Next, we have Elan Sudberg. He is the CEO of Alkemist Labs. Elan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everyone. It's Elan Sudberg, Alkemist Labs. Grateful for your attention today. I know you've got a lot to do, and we appreciate, of course, the Burdock Group for putting on this wonderful presentation. Alkemist Labs is a 23-year-old plant testing lab. We are ISO 17025, DEA registered, USDA listed, and experts at plant analysis will tell you if it is or if it is not and how much is in it. We test nearly 2,000 plants, and cannabis is just one. And as Asa mentioned, I was the founding chair of the Cannabis Committee, which was an interesting attempt to get that started and into our industry. So you're welcome. And again, I'm just happy to be here with these excellent co-panelists. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. And last but certainly not least, we have Dr. Marielle Weintraub. Probably said that wrong. I apologize. And she is the president of the U.S. Hemp Authority. Marielle, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, thank you very much. I am Dr. Marielle Weintraub. I am a founding board member and the current president of the U.S. Hemp Authority. For those of you who may not know much about the U.S. Hemp Authority, it is a certification program, and it's the hemp industry's initiative to provide high standards, best practices, and self-regulation to increase the confidence in consumers and regulators. I was introduced to the hemp industry in early 2016, and I first brought the hemp industry's need for valid and reliable testing to Covance, and continued to drive development of hemp-specific testing and standards until I left to join a hemp company in 2019. I am active in many dietary supplement and hemp industry trade associations. I am a board member of the U.S. Hemp Roundtable. I am on expert review panels and working groups for AOAC International's Cannabis Analytic Science programs. I too am a member of the American Herbal Products Association Cannabis Committee and a member of the United Natural Products Alliance Hemp Extracts Committee. A little bit about my PhD. It's in behavioral neuroscience from TCU in Fort Worth. And I focused most of my research on Alzheimer's disease and specifically prevention of cognitive deficits resulting from inflammation.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you all for participating in today's webinar. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts and experience with us today. So today we will be discussing several important topics for companies that are looking to use or companies that are currently using cannabis or hemp derivatives in their products. Time permitting, we will be discussing the following: nomenclature, misrepresentation, labels, claims, non-human use for our animal and pet folks, warning letters, regulations for farming hemp, testing, and the latest news in this space. We'd love to hear from all of you during today's presentation. If you have a question for our speakers, please submit them through the webinar, as we will answer as many of your questions as we can with the designated time we have left during our question and answer session at the end of our discussion. Also, there's additional information in the handout section for you to download. So let's begin. The U.S. Hemp Authority put out their new guidance procedure 2.0, and it includes a glossary of terms. The glossary is a great place for us to start our webinar to ensure that everyone understands what we're talking about and no one is confused by the terminology being used. As you can see, I've highlighted a few terms that I think are key. Marielle, could you please tell us a little bit about the new guidance procedure 2.0 and the wonderful glossary it contains and the importance of the terminology selected?
Absolutely. So the whole point of the U.S. Hemp Authority certification program is to set a level standard so that companies have a better chance of showing people that their products can be trusted. Farmers have a way of showing that they're following best practices. And one of the things that FDA had requested in one of their requests from industry was a way to understand the nomenclature. So I think one of the issues is there's a lot of products on the market, and if you look at a label, it might say full spectrum, but what does full spectrum really mean? So the first thing you come to in 2.0, which is the second year of our certification, is you come to this glossary. And what that'll do is when we are auditing the products, we make sure that anything on the label matches our definition. So if something, for instance, says it's full spectrum, nothing has been intentionally removed, specifically THC. If THC has been purposefully removed and is detected under a certain level, you would then actually call it broad spectrum. So we wanted to make it easier for consumers, easier for regulators, and that's just a start. And from there, we get into the rest of the guidance and regulations for hemp products.
Thank you. That is great. Next, we want to discuss the current marketplace, which is being compared to the Wild West. We've all heard this term repeatedly. It has been shown to a great extent that most products don't actually contain the quantity of CBD they claim to have, or worse yet, products may claim they don't contain THC when in fact they do, which could leave companies open and vulnerable to litigation. Asa, what are your thoughts on why this is occurring?
So many thoughts, but I'll try to keep it brief here. Let's begin with low label claims. There are enforcement actions and lawsuits happening here in the hemp CBD world, but also in the broader supplement world. So it's pretty standard. If you have a low label claim, whatever you're claiming on the label, for example, CBD at a certain milligram dose, if it's not there, that's considered misbranding. But I really wanted to peel that back and talk about expiration dating, which is part of this discussion too. For those of you who may not know, a label claim must be 100% plus at the end of the expiration dating. Generally, I suggest adding an 18% overage that takes into account testing variants, manufacturing loss, and shelf life degradation. And companies like Alkemist Labs can really help set up your stability program. Now, here's a big one. THC, be hyper aware when making any claims about this. Obviously, you can't have over 0.3% because then it turns into a drug. But there are a lot of lawsuits happening that are claiming no THC or THC free. Now, there may be people listening out there who are saying, wait a minute, my customer or my marketing department is really pressuring me to say THC free on the label. Excuse me. And my reply is, it's all about risk mitigation and also being truthful. There's really no definition, FDA definition of THC free, like there is for gluten free, which is under 20 parts per million gluten, if I'm remembering that correctly. That means that even 1 ppm THC free would not be considered free of. If you got to write something, my advice would be write no THC and then define that amount on the label. If you do that, that would then be a specification which you will have to ensure compliance with through testing and process control.
Do you mind if I add a little in there, Tatiane?
Yes, absolutely, please.
So the other thing, so when the U.S. Hemp Authority guidance was written, it does tell everyone to take into account the state they're in or their tribal regulations, as well as government regulations. And the reason it's written that way is because we have a patchwork of regulations coming from the different states because we don't have federal agreement. And one of those issues is going to come down to whether or not you can actually have THC free on your label. For instance, in the state of New Mexico, you're not allowed to have it on your label, period, end of story. So unless you're going to start creating labels for different states, which really is not the best way to save money, what you might want to do is find the hardest regulations to meet in every state and follow those. So part of the U.S. Hemp Authority, when it comes to this, what's in your product, is truth in labeling and transparency of products. And the concept there is what's on your label is truthful, just like Asa said. But at the same time, what we want people to do is have the transparency into those products to see what the heavy metal load is. So in the state of Indiana, you have to have a QR code on your products. That QR code brings you to a C of A, much like you can get from Alkemist Lab. And what you want is a friendly facing C of A because people have to read them. And so what they're looking for, very specific, not only what is in there, but what is not in there, and are the levels that are in there within legal limits.
That is actually really great advice. Thank you so much, Marielle, for that, which is a really great segue into our next piece, labels and claims. There's so much to be said about this topic. I wanted to start off by showing you this graphic. It's a gummy bear with a few of the most common claims being made about CBD, and I realize the font may be too small for everyone to make out the words, but I think it really illustrates the point. We all have seen products with claims from preventing anxiety to healing brain injury and everything in between. But there's scientific evidence showing CBD's efficacy for any of these things? I don't know. Let's start with ladies first. So Marielle, could you again tell us a little bit about how the truth in labeling would come into play to help mitigate some of these labeling issues?
Sure, because we are, because U.S. Hemp Authority certified groups do go through a third-party independent audit. We are looking for claims you are not supposed to make. Most of us are dietary supplement or food companies in the hemp industry. And as a dietary supplement or food, you're not allowed to make a structure function claim. You cannot make a disease claim The only time you can make, let's say, a structure function claim is when you're dealing with things like melatonin for sleep, and you have significant clinical background in order to make that claim. So most people that have CBD supplements on the market or food on the market should not be making claims. I feel like the people who are making claims are making the rest of us look bad. If you're buying a product and on the front it literally says will cure Alzheimer's, put that product back on the shelf. It's not being made from someone who's following the regulations, and I wouldn't trust the quality of that product.
Absolutely. Asa, any thoughts?
Yeah, great, Marielle. Those were some great comments. Thank you. And yeah, there was a recent voluntary direct-to-consumer recall, which we all saw in the past couple days, and that had to do with a high ppm load of lead in a CBD tincture. And when I looked at the label for that, it had all the claims, anxiety, and all this other kind of stuff. So, to kind of add on to what Marielle said, anatomy of a label, the only thing I would add to that is adverse event reporting, domestic street address, or phone number. And if I could kind of flip this on the side real quick and talk about product transparency and how it could potentially backfire if there is potentially not tight process control. So there was a recent class action, and the complaint cites the company making a free of heavy metal claim on their website. And this company references third-party passing heavy metal results on their website. Now, the plaintiff in this class action alleges their products were tested at the same lab, which was ProVerde, and they came up with a failing heavy metals result. Now, what this company did is they set their specifications for heavy metals and then used it in marketing. Now, according to the class action, the plaintiff alleges that some of the lots had high levels that were not passing. And really, this is the basis of the lawsuit. In short, if you set a specification, which an extension of label is your marketing, your website. So if you set a spec, which includes any marketing that may come out, just make sure that's followed. I've seen a lot of disconnect potentially happening between companies that have a marketing department, a social department, a regulatory department. So really getting everybody on the same page is important.
Absolutely. It's very, very important point. Thank you so much, Asa, for that. I wanted to highlight two types of claims that companies want to make but need to go through the right steps in order to be able to make them. And these are qualified health claims and authorized health claims. All right. These describe the relationship between a food and the reduced risk of disease. And this can be made with words or images. We all recognize the heart in the Cheerio box. Authorized health claims describe how they've been reviewed by the FDA and have been approved, such as can help lower cholesterol or help reduce blood pressure. But keep in mind that both of these require pre-market review and approval by the FDA, and as Marielle said, need to have really strong scientific evidence supporting it. Next, I want to discuss dietary supplements because labeling and claims really fall heavily and are super important for this. The market for dietary supplements, functional foods, and nutraceuticals is growing rapidly, and CBD is showing up in all of these products. For dietary supplements, structure and or function claims are what dietary supplements can make, such as we see here, promotes building strong bones. And again, you need to have strong supporting scientific evidence to be able to make these claims. It's also important to maintain cGMP compliance. So what are some key points that dietary supplement manufacturers need to know about FDA's CFR code 111 and 117? Marielle, can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Actually, the U.S. Hemp Authority certification program uses current good manufacturing practices from 111, 117, and those that fall under cosmetics as the base level of our certification. So that's your lowest level for qualification. And the concept there is you want to make sure you're running things according to FDA regulations and guidelines. And some of that does include these structure function claims. I want to make sure we can make a quick distinction between this. So you might see something that says calcium builds strong bones. Thank you for that example, by the way. But what is not a structure function claim, and what you will see and what is legal in dietary supplements without having the strict scientific or strict data you would need to make a function claim, is you will see a lot of supporting claims. So instead of builds strong bones, let's say we have CBD and calcium may support bones or strong bones or healthy bones. And so I want to make sure that you guys can see that difference, because someone making a claim of supporting supports a healthy heart, supports healthy sleep, supports healthy weight loss or healthy weight management. I apologize. Supports healthy weight management are all fine and compliant language. When it comes to 111 and 117, it's your manufacturing practices, and make sure you're keeping things like manufacturing records, sales records. I know Asa had mentioned reports of adverse events. You also need to be able to have that report in case you need to set up a recall. So there's a list of good manufacturing practices you need to follow. 111 is for dietary supplements, 117 is for food. And by knowing those, you're putting yourself in a safer position, because as soon as the FDA takes over the hemp industry, which at some point they're going to put us underneath their wing, we are all going to be expected to follow these basic rules that the FDA had put forth and had reevaluated and strengthened through the Food Safety Modernization Act. So we all need to understand cGMP compliance, and we also need to recognize the importance of it in the products that we're putting on the market.
Thank you for that. That was a great clarification in the claims portion of that statement. Shifting over to non-human use. So humans and animal foods are regulated very different for those of you that may be considering crossing over industries. Each species is different and have unique metabolism, so one size fits all approach does not work for the animal world. There needs to be consideration of the safety of the target animal species. So studies done in mice, which are very different from dogs, may not be sufficient to show safety for a dog treat, for example. So species-specific studies are extremely important if companies want to ensure the safety of their product for use in animals and want to be able to make some type of claim. Now, cannabis and hemp and their products have been used by humans for thousands of years, but there's not as much scientific data for use in non-humans. This makes studies to show efficacy and safety a key point in today's discussion. Any thoughts, Asa, Brent, regarding CBD use in animals and how companies and consumers should go about this?
Sure. I think I'll start off here, and I'll just focus on on the claims aspect of it, kind of really basic. But if you're going to sell any product into the animal or human market, it shouldn't have high microbials, pesticides, heavy metals, or really anything else that can do harm. Remember, do no harm. So based on precedent, there have been no CBD warning letters that I'm aware of for animal products that haven't involved claims. So I'm going to talk a little about risk and the whole speed limit analogy. Nothing in the hemp CBD world is without risk, but selling a product which is at label claim, is not contaminated, is labeled properly, and doesn't make out any outrageous claims will be in the much lower risk category. And that's all I really wanted to say about claims and animal stuff.
Okay, thank you so much. Brett, thoughts?
So, hi, glad to jump in the game here. So what I'm going to talk about is a little bit of the research around animal feed. So when hemp was first legalized, there was great excitement that this hemp stuff could be used as an animal feed or supplement. Post-extracted material, a byproduct of the process to make CBD, shows a fiber content and a protein content that it might be fit for human or animal consumption. So in post-2014 and especially post-2018, there have been a number of studies and a number of groups, which I'll talk about in a moment, that have really been driving the agenda forward to conduct the research and, most importantly, collect data. I've seen firsthand some studies in Kentucky and elsewhere where hemp in various forms, so hemp meal, hemp cake, hemp grain, and post-extracted material, has been fed to chickens or broiler chickens, pigs, and cattle, and have shown promising results. And you would think that this would make sense given the amount of hemp biomass that was produced in 2019, that it's a wonderful alternative use for both farmers and for companies. Driving a lot of this research is a group called the Hemp Feed Coalition. They represent many different links in hemp's value chain, committed to researching hemp as an animal feed and getting approval from AHPA and the FDA Center for Veterinary Medicine. Right now, the Hemp Feed Coalition is working on approvals for a new ingredient definition for hemp seed meal to be fed to chickens as a protein supplement. They're working with ASCO to initiate new ingredient definitions, and again, for the feed additive petition program through the FDA CBM. They're working with a number of different universities and companies to kind of centralize some of this research. And if that's something that the audience is interested in, I'm happy to dive into that more during the Q&A or offline. It will be a little while longer before you see this getting into the mainstream, because there's just so much research and, again, data collection that needs to be done in order for, let's say, a farmer or just a regular meat processor to feed hemp to their livestock. But it's coming. Give it a little while.
That's good to know. That's good to know, because I know a lot of companies are looking forward to that.
Absolutely.
All right. The next topic, which we've touched on lightly, briefly mentioned it, as we've discussed, the claims that are made go beyond what is on the product's label. Their website, social media, and blogs, or any marketing materials needs to be compliant, or it can put a company at risk to receive one of these FDA warning letters. Asa, what have you been seeing in the recent FDA warning letters, as I know you are an avid reader of them? Any trends companies should be aware of?
Yes, my wife comes out to the couch and I'm sipping a cup of Bengal Spice at 10:30 at night, and she's wondering, when are you coming to bed? Well, what am I doing? I'm reading warning letters. But there's been so many that have come out lately. This could be an entire webinar, but I'll try to keep it brief. It's something I really like reading, and my cat likes it too, because she'll sit on my lap and purr. So we're both fans of warning letters. So when we look at FDA and FTC enforcement, of course, we need to mention COVID and the COVID warning letters. There have been an abundance of warning letters by both the FDA and FTC in joint action 2 on COVID, which does include 45, which I think the FTC put out in one day earlier this month. Now, in 100% of these COVID warning letters, the warning letters mentioned COVID or Wuhan or coronavirus. So a good way to avoid a COVID-related warning letter is not to mention any of these buzzwords on your website, blogs, social media, all that other kind of stuff. I would even go so far as to suggest refrain from alluding that a product will protect from COVID symptoms, as in the eyes of the FDA or FTC, a consumer may think this would discourage other protective measures such as hand washing or social distancing. And even making an immune statement with a coronavirus or buzzword hashtag can attract attention. So of course, there's more happening in the world than just COVID. A few other interesting comments I've noticed from different warning letters. One warning letter mentioned claims on a company's Amazon storefront, which is pretty rare. To unscrupulous marketers, this was considered untouchable, or the holy grail, the unholy grail rather of the claims world. So I actually commend the FDA for looking at this. Another warning letter mentioned claims made on a company LinkedIn page, which is new. Now, little bit more here. A joint FDA-FTC warning letter came out a few days ago to an affiliate, and it's a pretty cool website talking about photography and literature. Well, he was also blogging about the benefits of a product and then linking to an Amazon storefront. But we don't often see the FDA or FTC giving affiliates warning letters, so I thought that would be worth pointing out here. And really, it all goes back to the premise: truth in advertising, and don't mislead the consumer.
Absolutely. And just to clarify, the FDA regulates everything that is on your product label, on its box, but the FTC regulates everything outside of that, everything on your flyers, pinups, posters, blogs, website. Those are all regulated by the FTC. I want to take a brief moment and say thank you to our viewers and for your active engagement and for the fantastic questions you are receiving. I do see them, and we look forward to answering them soon during our Q&A. So just hold on and keep sending these great questions in. The next topic we're going to discuss is the USDA regulation for hemp farming. And this was done by federal regulatory oversight via the 2018 Farm Bill. And what are some key things that those thinking about growing and farming hemp should know? Brett, I believe you are the most qualified to discuss the USDA regulation for hemp farming. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, any of this any cannabinoids or CBD that we're talking about have to come from somewhere, and that comes from hemp farmed by American farmers. The congressional intent of the 2014 Farm Bill and the 2018 Farm Bill was to provide American farmers with a legacy crop that they could derive economic value from. When the 2018 Farm Bill was passed in late December of 2018, the regulatory process to develop regulations for hemp and downstream products like CBD was put on hold. That was put on hold for about a month because of the government shutdown at the beginning of 2019, and arguably that set the industry back a little bit. But generally speaking, the USDA got it together very quickly, and beginning in February and March of 2019, they started to engage with the industry. And by last October 2019, they released a interim final rule for hemp production. Now, it's important that we understand that it's an interim rule, meaning that they're expecting to iterate over time, and they've been very open to feedback from the industry and to tweaking things kind of on the fly because, well, hemp has never really been regulated at the federal level before. Over the last year, I've spent quite a bit of time with the folks at the Agricultural Marketing Service, with the Risk Management Agency, working on crop insurance, Farm Service Agency, and a number of other three-letter agencies under the USDA banner to help them understand what's going on in the hemp industry. And quite frankly, they're still trying to figure it out, which isn't a bad thing. So real quick, I could spend an hour talking about this subject, but we're going to condense it to 5 minutes. But there's a number of elements of the interim final rule that are really good. The interim final rule was the first step of federal recognition of banking for hemp production. There's still a number of issues to work through that, but the IFR very clearly stated that hemp farmers and hemp processors can work with banks that's still to be, there's still some unraveling to do there, and hopefully that knot will be untied fully pretty soon, but it is what it is. The interim final rule also formally establishes interstate commerce involving hemp and hemp products, and very clearly states that neither federal nor state law enforcement officials can interfere with the interstate transportation of hemp or hemp products. Also, really important to mention that the definition of hemp in the 2018 Farm Bill states that hemp is cannabis sativa L with less than 0.3% THC, and most importantly, all cannabinoids except for delta-9 THC. Really important to note that. The interim final rule also addresses the issue of THC testing and allows some flexibility for THC testing, providing compliance with a measurement of uncertainty. This allows for the potential for laboratory error in testing and sampling to be rectified, and they've been very willing to engage with the industry to make sure that the measurement of uncertainty is, well, it's functional for farmers and processors. And, you know, if you're a farmer and your crop spikes above 0.3% THC, there should be the ability to retest and rebatch and make sure that that level gets down to a compliant level. I expect that the THC testing requirement is going to continually evolve. I get asked questions all the time about, you know, do you see it going above 0.3%? Do you see it going below 0.3%? And the answer is, we'll see. It's not going to happen in this Congress, but maybe in the future. And if there's enough interest from farmers and from processors to make sure that that remains functional. The interim final rule also opens up the potential for seed certification, and that's going to continue to be very important for access to reliable genetics for farmers. We heard many stories during the course of 2019 for farmers that, you know, bought a bag of seeds and thought they were going to grow a field full of CBD, and they ended up with a field full of male plants and with no CBD or THC in it. So wow. There's still a lot of work to be done. How much time do I have left, Tatiane?
I was gonna say, I think you're good, because we actually only have about 18 minutes left before we reach our hour cap. But right. If anyone has any questions about what Brent was discussing, please send it the question in, and Brett's contact information will also be provided in the end. And
I'll throw one more quick thing out there, is that sure. If you are a hemp farmer and you are engaging with farmers, the most important thing that you can do right now is collect good data. I don't know if anybody is following the coronavirus payments coming out of the USDA, the CFAC program, but hemp has been left out of that. And one of the main reasons that hemp has been left out of that is not political, it's because there's not enough data to support market prices and a decline in the commodity price. So please watch that space.
Thank you so much. Those are all really great and important points for farmers looking to grow the specific crop. The next topic is such an important topic for this specific ingredient, as there is no currently federal regulation about it. In April, the Association of Official Agricultural Chemists International, the AOAC, announced that a liquid chromatography diode array detection, or the LCDAD method to analyze cannabinoids, is approved to evaluate hemp for THC on the dry weight basis. And that was new and exciting. But is it the official national method that everyone's been waiting for? I don't know. But Elan, I think you're the best person to advise us on testing and tell us how to pick a good lab and how to get the best return on the big investment or the worthy investment that is testing.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. Testing, I'm a huge fan, as you can imagine. how to pick a good lab is really critical to the success of your product and also staying out of trouble. I've said it before on 100 different webinars that labs cost less than lawyers. No offense to any of my lawyer friends, I love you all. But labs cost less than lawyers, so do some testing and try to stay out of trouble. Picking a good lab is a challenge because there's so many labs to choose from. That's actually lab humor. There are not that many labs to choose from these days because the big labs have bought the other big labs who bought all the little labs, leaving you with only a few labs in the dietary supplement industry and then a handful of labs that hail from hemp and then also they hail from cannabis. So how to pick a good lab? I always start by telling my customers, don't use the alphabet to pick a good lab. That's rule number one. Rule number two, don't choose based on price because the race to the bottom on price will bring you to the bottom. Next step, I would suggest go to the FDA's website and type in that lab's name. Get creative too because a lot of labs have DBAs and check out that lab on the FDA's website. There should be no major violations. There could be 43s, which could be very, very minor technical problems. There could be a warning letter. For example, if you tested something and passed it and that same batch was later found to be killing people, that would be a problem and I would suggest not using that lab. So FDA, step one. Step two, look for a lab that has ISO 17025 accreditation for the test that you want to have done. A lab could have ISO 17025 for pH testing, but if you need to run cannabinoids, that might not be so relevant to that ISO. If a lab does show that they are ISO 17025, ask by who. They should be proudly displaying that, and then go to that accrediting body's website, search for the accreditation, and make sure that matches the relevant testing that you need. A lot of times people are claiming to be ISO and they are not, in fact, ISO accredited. And then, of course, audit them. You want to audit your lab. You want to send someone who knows how to audit a lab to audit that lab. If you don't know how to do it or don't have staff, there are tons of consultants that would love to go help you audit a lab to make sure they are the right lab for you.
I know
now,
we
lab
will.
Testing, yeah, exactly. Burdock Group is one of the best. So now lab testing is expensive because it takes a lot of money to pay smart people to run expensive equipment. That LCDAD method that we just mentioned, that's a nearly $100,000 piece of equipment. It doesn't always have to be, but it is. So how do you make money off testing? What I like to say is that for too long, the C of A's that you're paying for are tucked away in the drawer of a mid-level quality control professional's office or desk. It just gets put away, never to be seen again unless an audit or an investigation occurs. Well, you paid money, good money, and you probably pay good money all year to various labs to get these tests done. Why not brag about it? This is essentially a transparent access to the quality that you're essentially trying to sell, whether you're selling B2B or B2C. Trying to make an R on your I or return on your investment in quality is very easy if you simply take it from the P&L as a cost in quality and move it up towards marketing, and you brag about the quality of your product. You brag about the lab you use. You show your C of A's, which is why we have at Alkemist Labs something we call next generation transparency, and it's essentially a consumerized C of A. It's as though Reader's Digest took my nerdy C of A and made it so that the basic people can read it and understand it. As Marielle noted earlier, some labs are offering QR codes that link to the C of A. They should be posting those reports online. There's really no reason not to. And I'll leave this because I know time is short, but I asked the question, why wouldn't you share your quality from any lab, from all labs? If you can't answer that question, then there's something wrong with the labs you're choosing.
That's a great point. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Tati, just really quickly there, your first question was, is there federal THC testing standard? And unfortunately, not completely yet. However, what you also pointed out was the AOAC cannabinoid analysis. And interestingly enough, that analysis is recommended and actually demanded by the IFR. So from USDA specifically calls out that AOAC method for testing. So you might also want to look for a lab that is running that method, so that if the USDA tests your hemp plant and So if the USDA tests it, they're testing it the same way you are. That way you're avoiding any surprises.
Yeah, that's a great point. You really want to avoid any surprises. And those C of A's are really going to be the determinant of making your product stand out, and as what we call the Wild West world of products with everything and nothing, and you don't really know what's in them. So thank you both for that. And the last topic that we're going to be discussing today is what is happening. What is the latest development in this industry? Many states are working on legislation for hemp products and extracts to be used in food, but it looks like Virginia is the first to sign legislation into law that actually allows CBD in food products. The regulation actually states that industrial hemp extract is intended for human consumption as food. Brett, as the government affairs guy, I'd like to get your view on this. What were your thoughts on this regulation that was passed?
So I'm a big proponent. If you've heard me speak in person or talk to me at any number of hemp events or been on any organization calls with me in the last 5 years, you'll know that my line has continually been hemp is food. Let me say that again. Hemp is food. We at Gincana and we in the hemp industry have eagerly been awaiting the FDA to come out with regulations that are going to allow for what we call pull-through demand from the farm to finished goods, and that includes a pathway for hemp and hemp-derived CBD into food, food beverages, and dietary supplements. It hasn't happened yet. We expect the movement on this. Well, we expect the movement on this earlier in the year, but because of COVID-19, those timelines have been pushed back. However, as Tatiane mentioned, there is a bright glimmer of hope, I would say, from a piece of legislation that was passed by the Virginia legislature, SB 918. This was signed into law by Governor Northam on April 6th. And what this does is it defines hemp extract as a food. So it sets requirements for the production of hemp extract for a food, creates conditions for which a manufacturer of hemp extract or food can be considered an approved source. It provides that the THC is less than 0.3%, and that it is only intended for human consumption. The Virginia Board of Agriculture under SB 918 has further ability to adopt regulations that are in line with what we're doing in the broader industry in terms of contaminant testing, label requirements, batch testing, and so on and so forth. And we're excited, but unfortunately, at the federal level, we're not able to do this yet. So it's right. We have our work cut out for us there.
Yes, and Texas has also proposed some legislation, but that hasn't gone through yet. But what we see is this patchwork starting to form. All these states are moving at their own pace because the federal government, unfortunately, is lagging.
Yes, and groups like the U.S. Hemp Roundtable and the U.S. Hemp Growers Association are on the front lines of driving that legislation and making sure, and working with our partners at AHPA and UMPA and the rest, that these that this patchwork of state regulation, state laws and regulations are functional for producers like ourselves.
Yes. Okay, we have 7 minutes left, and we were going to discuss the descheduling of Epidiolex. And I know we can talk about that for hours. I know, Brett, you can talk about this one specific topic for hours. But I do want to make sure that we do get to the questions, because we have several really good questions that I want to throw out there. So I want to thank everyone for submitting your questions. We did receive quite a few of them, and we'll be answering them in the remaining 6.5 minutes that we have left. If we don't get to your question during the webinar, we will follow up with you afterwards via email. Also, as a way of showing our gratitude for your interest and engagement, we want to give those of you that are not already a Burdock Group clients with a 30-minute complimentary consultation with one of our experts. Just email me with the code webinar21 on the subject line, and we'll get that scheduled for you. So let's begin. Our first question: will the presentation be made available? Yes, absolutely. Please send me an email if you would like the link to the recording of this webinar, and I will send it to you. Next question: is CBD allowed in food? What about in dietary supplements? Who wants to tackle that question? Because as the regulatory folks, I know the answer.
So I would love to start tackling that one, only because the easiest way to explain hemp and CBD and food and dietary supplement is to have you first separate federal and state guidelines. So if you look federally, hemp was made legal to grow starting in 2016, but officially in 2018. 2014 Farm Bill, and then 2018 Farm Bill. But if you actually look at it in a state by state patchwork, which I know some of us like me complain about when it comes to labeling, it's actually what allows you to be producing these foods and or dietary supplements. So if you look at the state of Colorado, they have very specific regulations that allow you to do it, how you do it, what licensing agreements you need. Same in Texas, and actually in reality, same in over 40 states in the United States. So the question is an interesting one, because like everything else in the world of hemp, it is gray. But you have to look at both federal and state regulations when you're looking into the risk and reward of growing and selling hemp products.
I thought hemp was green, Marielle. I'm kidding.
Okay, we'll call it greenish.
No, that was a great, perfect answer. So it depends. It depends who you're looking at, where you're looking to sell. The next question, which is for you, Marielle: what is the regulatory status of the U.S. Hemp Authority?
I don't know if I understand that question. The U.S. Hemp Authority is a certification program. It is a self-regulating organization, much like USDA Organic was before it had the USDA portion put in front of it. We use third-party independent auditors who are certified to audit to do our audits for us. So I don't know if that answers your question. If not, you can email it, and I will try to get you a better answer with better understanding of the question.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, this question I believe is going to be for Brett. Do farmers have the ability to test for hemp themselves in the field, or is it required to send to a third-party testing lab to run and report the tests? Elan, Brett, who wants to tackle that one?
Well, I can get started, and then Elan, you can absolutely jump in. So, from my experience over the last 5 years, we at Gincana, we went out of our way to ensure that we are doing QA/QC testing in the field at regular intervals during the life cycle of the crop. For any farmer getting into hemp, knowing your risk and understanding what risks are associated with cultivating a hemp crop are very important. One of those risks, of course, is testing. So yes, I would recommend, and Elan, please back me up here, but yeah, I would recommend if you're cultivating a hemp crop, you should absolutely be testing it at regular intervals during the life cycle to ensure that it remains compliant. Now, what the USDA wants to know is that when that hemp is ready to leave the farm, is ready to be harvested, that it is compliant, and so that means that it has a THC content of less than 0.3%. When it leaves the farm, the regulatory oversight of that is still a little bit murky. As Marielle said, it is gray, or as I joked, it's green. But it's highly recommended to do that. Highly recommended to test your product test your crop while it's in the field and when it's ready for harvest.
Great.
Just to back up what was just said, I couldn't agree more, Brett. The testing at different various stages of the plant is important to make sure you're not going to be over anything. And again, just working with a lab that knows how to handle the material, because it's going to come in fresh, needs to be dried correctly. There's a lot of labs that test everything from tilapia to soil, and then also hemp. But again, just make sure you're working with a lab that knows how to work with the plant, specifically that one that will need to be dried.
At the same time, I think I thought I heard part of the question was whether or not you should be testing it yourself. And they do make some portable units. The quality of those units, I am not so sure about. You might want to look into the data on those, but otherwise it's very expensive to do yourself. So although testing is expensive, to set up a proper lab that's ISO accredited and approved by the USDA to be used, you're better off shipping out to a lab that does it all day long.
Yeah, just to back up what Marielle said, I do not trust those handheld little tricorder devices. They're not validated. There's a lot of magic boxes out there using either cell phones or IR scanners to do quantification.
Or drones.
Yeah, drones. Oh my gosh, no. So yeah, find a good lab. Find a lab that's a lab. Use a lab for a lab.
Yeah, and maybe in 5 years, those magic boxes will do what they say they will do, but we're not there yet. And don't let anybody fool you that we're there yet.
Right.
Thank you guys. Those were all great answers. Unfortunately, we are out of time, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I hope everyone found this webinar interesting and enlightening. We had a lot of great interaction and unfortunately not a whole lot of time. But thank you everyone again for joining us. And a big thank you to my amazing panelists. You guys were amazing. And if you would like any additional information from any of us, please feel free to contact us via the email addresses you see on the screen. And we look forward to answering and addressing your questions. I have received them. We know who you are. We have your email address, so we will be able to respond to them in a timely fashion. And thank you again. We look forward to seeing you again soon in our next webinar. Take care, everyone, and stay safe.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you
Cheers.
so much.